Chapter 1, Capitol 1. My immigration towards the promise of a future and education. Imigrarea mea către promisiuni de viitor și educație. My name is Bianca. I was born in Bacău, Romania. I grew up there until the age of 8. Then I moved with my mother, almost a year after my father, to Canada. I still remember the day we left in our last summer days in Romania. Surprisingly, these memories are still fresh. I remember my emotions with excitement for a change, but sadness for leaving the familiarity. My home, my neighborhood, the people I know since birth, and even my cat Katie. My parents always told me that immigrating to Canada would be done for our future and my education. Therefore, I was the first in the family to graduate from high school and attend university. Now, I'm halfway through my undergraduate studies and working in my field. During high school, I had the opportunity to be featured at Crick's Village Gallery and Cafe as a young artist spotlight and had the chance to collaborate with a local artist to have 2 of my artworks featured on textiles. While I could have had these opportunities, these were also made possible due to my parents' hard work and sacrifice, putting me first before themselves. I have a tremendous gratitude to them. The trip was tiring and nauseating. We had a flight from Bucharest at 6 a.m. to Frankfurt, Germany. Then we waited 4 hours for the next plane to Montreal, which was an 8-hour flight and an additional 8-hour drive to Woodstock. The challenging part was navigating the airports and not knowing how to speak English, especially when they went through our luggage and discarded our seasoning for food. I remember the security checkpoints asking us what it was used for, and we could not think of the word food or spice in English. Mom could only say for baby, and I patted my tummy as an indication of food. The security person was so confused and just threw it out. Mom still holds a grudge, and I'm still confused as to why we weren't allowed to bring it with us, even though it was properly sealed and the brand ships to European stores in Canada. Nonetheless, most fantastic part of the trip was the first flight to Frankfurt. I was able to have the window view. I'll never forget being up in the sky and clouds looking like cotton candy from pink, blues, and oranges. It was a magical moment. Unfortunately, while the first flight was magical, the second flight was the opposite. Mom and I both fell instantly ill. Mom scrambled to find a plastic bag that used to contain the small blanket provided by the airline to empty our upset stomachs violently. We could not stop vomiting until blood appeared. At the same time, everyone around us was cheering. We had landed in Canada. After the most wonderful experience of landing in Canada, we reunited with my father, who was waiting for us. The 3 of us were back together, a reunited family. We were so exhausted and hungry. When we arrived to our new home, the apartment was little furnished. It had 2 beds. My room had 2 tables. And in the kitchen, there was a table with chairs. We were starting from zero, and at that moment, I realized it was our place. I finally had my own room and my own bed. In Romania, I used to live in a 1-bedroom apartment. We shared with my aunt, my uncle, his wife, and their child, and my grandmother. So it was a small place shared between many people. After that, it was just the 3 of us, Mom, Dad, and me. Chapter 2, Capitol 2, Defenseless, without language. Fără apărare, fără limbaj. To be an immigrant child that didn't know English. Because of my language difficulties, it was hard to communicate, primarily when dealing with bullying. I've always had to deal with bullying and fat phobia, so it wasn't something new. In Romania, I had rocks thrown at me, was made fun for being overweight, and even my first grade teacher commented about my weight and told me what not to eat. In Woodstock, in elementary school, my experience with bullying was different. In grade 3, after a few weeks starting school, we were getting ready for the daily 15-minute outdoor break. While getting prepared to go outside, a classmate decided to pick on me. I cannot remember what they said, but I backed away and said, "Just leave me alone," as I didn't know how to defend myself properly. Furthermore, my English was limited, so it was better to leave the situation as soon as possible. My class teacher came over to me and said, "Don't do that ever again." I was so confused as to what they meant. I learned that a student had gone to the teacher and thought I was going to beat up the kid who was speaking on me. I tried my hardest to explain the situation. To my dismay, I was the one scolded, which left me confused and frustrated about not being able to defend myself, and that I was seen as the bully instead. Chapter 3, Capitol 3. Reconfiguring my birth language structure. Reconfigurarea structurii limbajului meu natal. My birth language is Romanian. I learned to read and write in Romanian until I moved to Canada. However, I would have never thought I'd have to restructure my sentences when speaking in Romanian to avoid offending English-speaking people. When we immigrated to Woodstock, we would always get looks from locals when speaking our native language in public, either from curiosity or when certain words sounded offensive in English. My birthday was coming up. I believe I was turning 11 at that time. We were looking to get a cake in town. We went to Dairy Queen because I had requested an ice cream cake. I never had an ice cream cake until I went to one of my friends' birthdays at that time. We were looking at the options, and we were pretty disappointed with the selections available. My parents and I were talking in our language and discussing the choices. I remember I said a sentence that was similar to the F word in English, "Asta fac eu," which translates to, "I will do it." Of course, the DQ worker looked shocked by my words, but didn't say anything. But we saw their expression, and I felt harshly judged by their reaction. We have tried to shift how we speak and avoid certain words. However, sometimes I forget to restructure my sentences. Mom would bring my attention to changing my wording because people do not understand what we're saying, or people would think that we're vulgar. This was mainly because I was a child and we would think that people saw us as uneducated because of our vulgar language. Over time, I became very conscious of the words I would say in public. Often during school lunch, when I would call my parents, I would apologize to my teachers beforehand so they knew that I was talking in Romanian. Recently, I've stopped restructuring my sentences. However, it still lingers in my mind in public that they think I'm vulgar or offensive. Even with my friends or their parents, I've had to explain to them when they learn I'm Romanian. Chapter 4, Capitol 4. Yet I do, totuși o fac. While I don't connect with the young adult culture, I still don't feel like I belong due to not being a citizen yet. I wish to be a citizen, especially since I've grown up with my peers in New Brunswick. I went through the Canadian system since I was 8, and I learned the same language as Canadians, learned the same history as Canadians. I learned and grew up in Canadian culture, experience elementary, middle, and high school, and post-secondary education in Canada. I do not feel connected because I don't have the right of a full Canadian citizen yet, even though I'm more socially conscious than Canadians towards social issues. So what makes me less Canadian than my peers even though we went through the system together? They don't have to go through the citizenship process, yet I do. Chapter 5, Capitol 5. Home, acasă. I lived in New Brunswick since I was 8, and now I'm 20 years old. I want to call it home, but the sense of community is missing. I want to call it home, but I have yet to get citizenship. I want to call it home because I grew up here. I want to call it home because New Brunswick is a beautiful province. I want to call it home because I have left the province before and returned. I want to call it home because I'm growing my roots here. I want to call it home. Locuiesc în New Brunswick de la 8 ani, iar acum am 20 de ani. Vreau să-i spun acasă, dar simțul comunității lipsește. Vreau să-i spun acasă, dar nu am primit cetățenia. Vreau să-i spun acasă pentru că am crescut aici. Vreau să-i spun acasă pentru că New Brunswick este o provincie frumoasă. Vreau să-i spun acasă pentru că mai am părăsisem provincia și m-am întors înapoi. Vreau să-i spun acasă pentru că îmi cresc rădăcinile aici. Vreau să-i spun acasă.